Star Trek, The Next Generation, Starfleet Academy, Loyalties, Chapter 9. Everyone at Starfleet Academy knew about Cadet Data. Since arriving at the Academy a year ago, his reputation as an expert on computers, or almost anything else for that matter, was well known. Data was an android who was found on Omicron Theta 4 years ago by the crew of the Federation starship Tripoli. He was the only remaining being at the colony. The 411 colonists had entered all their memories into Data, and all had died when a crystal entity attacked the planet. After several weeks on board the Tripoli, Data decided to enter Starfleet Academy. It seemed like the right thing to do. After all, Starfleet Academy was the perfect place for Data to grow and understand the universe around him. The Academy offered a cadet the chance to learn, explore, and especially to confront and experience the unknown. But it wasn't easy for Data to enter Starfleet Academy. Before he could enter the Academy as a cadet, he had to wait for Starfleet to make an important decision. Was Data a sentient life form? To find out, Starfleet put Data through test after test. They poked him and prodded him. They gave him tests to determine his ability to think and reason. They asked him question after question. And in the end, 3 years later, thanks to Starfleet bureaucracy, Data was allowed to enter the Academy as a first-year cadet. The officials at Starfleet had decided Data was indeed sentient. Beverly found Cadet Data's quarters and pushed a chime at the door. In response, the door swished open, revealing a room with few decorations. "Cadet Data?" she asked, looking around the door and into the room. "I am here. Please come in," said a pleasant voice from behind a computer console in the corner. She had never seen Data before. She imagined, like many people who had never met him, that the android would be stiff and less animated, but she found Data was different. His fingers moved smoothly over the computer console, and his eyes moved quickly back and forth as he read the computer screen in front of him. Data's form was human, but with several differences. His eyes were yellow, his skin was a pale gold color, and his dark hair was slicked back. Someone once told her that Data had the strength of 5 humans and could move faster than most humans. She also heard that Data's positronic brain was amazing. It processed information as fast as a fair-sized computer. As she approached the computer where Data sat, he stood up and extended his hand. "I am Cadet Data. Can I help you?" Beverly took his cool hand in hers and shook it. "Cadet Beverly Howard. I'm in Starfleet Medical. First year." "Then you arrived 3.7 weeks ago with the rest of the new cadets?" "Yes," she said with a laugh, "but I never figured it out to the nearest 10th. Data did not laugh, but stared at her. "Can I help you with something?" he asked in his soft voice. Beverly wanted to ask him so many questions. What did he eat? Did his hair grow? Did he know how to sing? Did he have a pulse? Or what would happen if he scratched his hand, or even if he could scratch his hand? She wanted to know what he was studying, if he would ever want to go into medicine, or if he liked to watch a sunset. But she held back the many questions and concentrated on her mission. Maybe one day she would have a long talk with Data. "Cadet Data, please call me Data." "Thank you. Please call me Beverly," she responded. "Data, I hear that you're an expert in computers, hardware and programming. May I ask you some questions about computers? It's for a class I'm taking." Data cocked his head to the side in a very human gesture. She wondered if the movement was programmed, or if he picked up the habit by watching people around him. "Why do you not ask your professor?" "He's very busy right now. Plus, I thought you could give me a different viewpoint." Data moved from the computer console and offered Beverly a nearby chair. He sat in the chair next to her, his back very straight. Beverly thought it looked uncomfortable, but he seemed to be at ease. Most of my questions deal with holodeck simulations, she said, folding her hands on her lap. I'm taking the medical emergencies course. The course for first-year medical cadets, Data interrupted. Yes, she continued. I really like the course, but I'm wondering about the programming of a simulation. I wondered if it's possible to modify a holodeck simulation. Yes, it is possible, said the android. A person familiar with holodeck simulation programming can make small modifications, such as changing an evergreen tree to an oak tree. Or they can make larger changes, such as changing a desert to an ocean. It is relatively easy. You see, a holographic environment simulator produces an image with the holographic imagery subsection, responsible for the realistic backgrounds seen in the simulation. The solid characters and objects are composed of solid matter, arranged by a transporter-based replicator. Each one of these is related to the omnidirectional holodiode, which projects the force fields. Data, good, interrupted Beverly. She held up a hand, realizing that Data could probably go on forever explaining the intricacies of the holodeck. That's excellent. So it is possible to modify a simulation? Yes. If you ran the simulation again, would you be able to detect the change? Yes, he said, his gold eyes staring at her intently. If you changed the holographic element, it would be possible to detect when the program was run again. That is, if you as a sentient being viewed the universe in the visible part of the spectrum, you would notice the difference. As you probably know, hollow images are only created to be seen in the visible range of the electromagnetic spectrum, no doubt. Yes, Data, thank you. But what if it were a subtle change? Would you still notice a modification? You would have to know what you were looking for, especially if it were a small change. Perhaps I could detect such a change, as I have found my senses are usually keener than the senses of a human. But you, Beverly, might not be able to detect such small changes. So it is possible to modify a simulation without noticing, she said, almost to herself, sorting out Data's words. Almost like programming a robot to... Oh, she stammered, her face flushing. I'm sorry. Beverly, do not worry. Your comment does not offend me. More accurately, I am an android. I do not have feelings such as anger or embarrassment. It is not in my programming. Beverly smiled at Data. She wished, too, she didn't have to feel embarrassed at the moment, but then realized she preferred to have emotions. She wondered if Data wished he could have emotions. I might add that even though you could not detect the modification of the programming, he continued as if nothing had happened, the record of such a change would be imprinted on the computer tape. Could a computer detect the change? Yes, a computer could detect such a change. But, Beverly, as you must know, it is against Starfleet rules to modify a tape for a cadet simulation class. As if that would stop someone from actually doing it, Beverly thought. Unless you had the correct authorization, she added out loud. That is true. Beverly, he said suddenly, leaning in her direction. Now may I ask you a question? She looked at Data and nodded. Are you contemplating doing something illegal with a holodeck simulation? No, Data, not at all. Beverly sighed and made a face. Are you in pain, Beverly? Do you need medical assistance? No, she said, moving uncomfortably in her seat. Data's voice was almost a whisper. Is something wrong? Oh, Data, she said, standing up and walking over to a nearby computer console. One of my friends, my roommate as a matter of fact, is in trouble, and I really want to help her, but I can't seem to figure out what happened. Data tilted his head again. Perhaps I can be of assistance. Based on your questions, I assume your roommate was involved in the medical emergencies class, in which Cadet Peter Peterson was injured. And I assume also that she was directly involved in the injury, perhaps in the same simulation as Cadet Peterson when he was hurt. Beverly nodded. You'd make a great detective, Data. On the contrary, I am a Starfleet Academy cadet, training to be an officer. As you know, we are all trained to reason, to ask questions, and to find solutions, and we are all here to help each other. Beverly sat down again and smiled. Maybe she did fit into the academy. After all, she had been doing such reasoning too. With enthusiasm, she proceeded to tell Data what she had found so far. How preliminary studies showed it was not the holodeck. How several of her friends had checked the simulation tape and found nothing. And how Commander Wiley had dismissed her shock from the holodeck's medical tricorder. Data hesitated for a moment, almost as if he was absorbing Beverly's words. I assume your roommate does not have the expertise to modify a simulation. Beverly nodded. And no doubt Commander Wiley was in the holodeck at the time. He is known to be one of the best simulations experts in Starfleet. He would have the ability and the opportunity to change a simulation, and he could have made the change quickly. But Data, why create a shock that would knock the socks off a cadet? Perhaps you should ask the commander, he said, then hesitated. His face was as straight as when they started the conversation. But, Beverly, I do not think such a possibility exists. Although there have been reports from the 20th century in which people struck by cloud-to-ground lightning did literally have their socks knocked off, as you say. But I find that such an allegory is usually incomplete in its accuracy. I believe it is called a legend or folk tale. Beverly laughed. Data's face looked slightly confused as she stood up and held out her hand. It's just a figure of speech, Data. But you're definitely right. It's time to confront Commander Wiley again. And this time, if it's possible, I want Admiral Moody to be there. I hope I have helped. Data, you have helped me more than you'll ever know. As the door of her quarters whooshed open, Beverly was surrounded by the smell of fresh lemons. Clara was at her desk, a steaming mug of herbal tea in her hand. That smells wonderful, said Beverly. She collapsed on her bed and closed her eyes. Was Cadet Data overwhelming? Clara asked, sipping her tea. No, Beverly said, turning over and facing her roommate. He was wonderful, intelligent, and he agrees you had nothing to do with the simulation problem. Claire jumped up from her chair, enthusiastically yelling, Yes! If you're going to yell, interrupted Beverly, rubbing her temples, please get me some lemon tea. No problem. As Claire ordered the tea from the replicator, Beverly told her what Data said. It is possible to make subtle changes to the simulation, explained Beverly, but only by someone who had authorization. Data and I both agreed it's time to face Wiley again, and this time I think Admiral Moody should be there. Before Claire could reply, a communication chime sounded. Beverly reached for her compad. Ah, Beverly, came the familiar voice. How's your investigation proceeding? Hi, Mrs. Owner. Fine, I think, she replied. She motioned to Claire to come over to the compad, then turned back to the Moldanian woman on the view screen. I just got back from talking to Cadet Data. Yes, I know him. He has visited my restaurant several times. I find he is shy. Beverly saw Mrs. Owner's blue eyes twinkle with the memory of Data. I also know he is very good at computers. Did he help you? Beverly nodded and related her conversation with Data. After she was finished, Mrs. Owner tilted her head. I will go with you to Admiral Moody's. She is a friend of mine. You know the Admiral? Asked Claire, looking at the compad screen from over Beverly's shoulder. Mrs. Owner nodded. She is a regular at my cafe. A very interesting woman. She also put us on probation, added Claire. Yes, I know. I will meet you at the Admiral's office in about 1/4 hour. Is that all right with you? They nodded and cut off the compad link. Beverly and Claire walked as fast as possible through campus to Admiral Moody's office. They didn't have long to wait for Mrs. Owner. The Moldanian woman arrived shortly after the cadets, complete with the usual smile on her face. She was dressed in white with a light yellow shawl covering her shoulders. She also carried a small wicker basket in her right hand. As the senior cadet led them into the room, Beverly thought of how she had seen enough of the Admiral's office in the past few days. Admiral Moody had a quizzical look on her face as she saw Beverly and Claire. She smiled when she saw Mrs. Owner. Mrs. Owner, gushed Moody. She extended both her hands to the older woman. How are you? Mrs. Owner squeezed Moody's hands in her left hand. Ah, Miomi, I bring you a gift. She handed the small basket to the Admiral and watched. Moody opened the basket and sniffed. Beeswit. What? Beeswitch? Sorry. Beeswitch? I haven't had Beeswitch since I left my sister's house in Old Kenya. Now I'm really curious why you're here, exclaimed the Admiral. Beverly thought the Admiral seemed a little nervous round the Moldanian. Yes, I bring my 2 good friends with me, Mrs. Owner said. She turned slightly toward Beverly and Claire. Yes, we have met before, said Moody, her face turning stern. In fact, too many times, Ambassador. The 2 cadets looked quizzically at each other, then turned to Mrs. Owner. Ambassador? They asked in unison. Moody smiled again and looked at Mrs. Owner. It's not something that is well known. Mrs. Owner is friends with most higher officials at Starfleet Command and is one of the most respected ambassadors from her world. The Moldanian turned to Claire and took her hand. Oh, Claire, my people believe that their ambassadors should meet all types of beings from all cultures on an equal basis. On Earth, as in many other cultures, it is the meal where people are most relaxed. That is why I run the cafe. It would not be right to call myself ambassador in front of my guests, correct? There, I am Mrs. Owner, even though I am still ambassador for my people. Claire stammered. Then Mrs. Owner is not my real name, she finished. You cannot pronounce my real name. It includes sounds that most humans cannot imitate. Now, Beverly, she continued, turning to the cadet and bowing slightly, please tell Miomi Muti your story. Beverly smiled at the reference to Moody's first name, while the Admiral cleared her throat in an authoritative manner. Beverly told the story of how she obtained and checked a copy of the tape for any tampering and found no evidence. She also mentioned the conversation with Cadet Data and her theories on what happened to the simulation. I think someone made a subtle, unnoticeable change to the computer program. Claire is not a programmer, so I don't believe she caused Peter to get hurt. Not only that, a person needs authorization to modify the computer program. So that leaves Commander Wiley? Moody asked, frowning. Beverly hesitated, then looked into the Admiral's dark eyes. Commander Wiley did have the correct authorization, but I don't think someone with the commander's background and enthusiasm for his students in the academy would jeopardize his chances of staying in Starfleet. I really don't think the commander would tamper with the simulation. Sir. Moody sighed and turned to her computer console. Computer, where's Commander Max Wiley? Commander Max Wiley is in holodeck 4. Medical Emergencies Class Holodeck, she said softly. Cadet Terry, cancel all my communications for the next hour. I'll be in Holodeck 4. The Admiral picked up a data pad and briskly announced, Cadets, it's time we face the Commander and his holodeck simulation. And Ambassador, we could use your help, too. As they walked to Holodeck 4, cadets passing the group acknowledged Admiral Moody with a curt salute. Beverly chuckled to herself as she realized how it must have piqued the cadets' curiosity. Why would 2 first-year cadets be walking with the commanding officer of Starfleet Medical and Mrs. Owner? Just before they reached the building, a voice called out from behind the group. Beverly stopped and turned to see a cadet quickly walking toward her, a pad in his hand. Cadet Data stopped before her. May I talk with you, Beverly? Chapter 10. Data nodded to the group standing on the walkway. Admiral Moody, Mrs. Owner, and Cadet Clairvoy, said the cadet, staring intently at Data. Beverly knew why Claire was staring. She'd never met the android. She wondered if it bothered Data that everyone stared at him. Then again, he did tell her he didn't have such emotions. And Cadet Voy. Beverly, he continued, turning back to her, I have some additional news for you. Cadet Data, does this concern a holodeck simulation? Asked Moody, stepping closer to the android. Yes, sir, he responded, nodding to the Admiral. Earlier in the day, I talked with Cadet Howard about a holodeck simulation. A holographic environment simulator produces an image with a holographic imagery subsection responsible for the realistic backgrounds seen in the simulation. The solid characters and objects are composed of... Cadet Data, interrupted the Admiral. We don't really need a lecture on holographic simulations. Yes, sir. As I said, I explained to Cadet Howard that someone familiar with holodeck simulation programming could easily change a holodeck program. But I have some new information for Cadet Howard. There is another way to fix a simulation. I do not know why I did not think of it before. Perhaps it was because I was working on the pressure analysis of a warp field core in a... Cadet, the Admiral interrupted again. Your idea on fixing the simulation, please? Yes, sir, he said, a slight frown forming on his face. There is another way to modify a holodeck simulation without actually detecting it. It is possible to enter what is called a computer virus into a computer system. There are many types of viruses, including those that, once they accomplish their tasks, can be removed from the computer. Claire frowned. Removed? The android nodded. A virus-type program can be entered into a computer via a computer disk. The virus that is sent into a simulation could cause part of the holodeck simulation to act differently. For example, a virus could cause a computer console to produce incorrect information, such as an incorrect warp speed reading at the helm. When the program had done its work, the virus could be called back to its home or to the awaiting computer disk without leaving a visible trace on the simulation tape. The helm would then report the simulation's correct warp speed. The computer disk could then be removed from the computer console. No one, except the person who entered and called back the virus, would know. It is possible. What about the fail-safes? Asked Beverly. The virus program could essentially overwhelm the simulation program and cause the fail-safes not to work, he explained. Or the actual virus-type program may include an additional override program that would cancel the fail-safes. But one would have to have the correct security codes to override the fail-safes. No one said a word. Perhaps this type of computer virus can be best explained with an analogy, he continued. A fine example is the 19th century Sherlock Holmes detective story, The Speckled Band, by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. In this mystery story, a woman is killed for an unknown reason. Holmes eventually determines that a swamp adder, a deadly snake, slipped into the victim's room through a vent, bit the helpless girl, then glided back to the killer waiting in another room. The woman was killed seemingly without a trace of who or what killed her, although a computer virus does not bite. "I think we know that, Cadet," said Moody. "Yes, sir." "But if it doesn't leave a trace, how can we find out if it's true?" Beverly asked. "As I said," Data continued, "it leaves no visible trace that can be detected in the simulation tape. But it will leave a data trace in the program." The Admiral suddenly smiled at Data. "Thank you, Cadet. You have been very helpful. Perhaps you'd like to accompany us to Holodeck 4. I think your explanations will greatly enhance this investigation." "I would be glad to help, Admiral Moody." Moody turned on her heel and walked toward the holodeck building, the others following close behind. Holodeck 4's door swished open in response to Admiral Moody's commands. She entered the holodeck first, followed by Mrs. Owner and the 3 cadets. Wiley was standing on a chair behind a computer, trying to reach a computer tape on top of a tall console. A puzzled frown formed on his face as he stepped off the chair, one arm filled with computer tapes. "Oh, Admiral Moody. Hello, sir," he said, looking puzzled at the Admiral. "What's wrong?" "Commander Wiley, I hope you have a few minutes," she said. She stood in front of the console and clasped her hands behind her. "We have several questions and concerns we would like to discuss with you." "We? Mrs. Owner, Cadet Data, what are you doing here? Why are these cadets here?" he demanded, his face turning red. He juggled the tapes in both hands. "I asked them here, Commander," responded Moody. "They're making their own inquiries about the Peterson simulation. Mrs. Owner and Cadet Data have been assisting the cadets, and I'm interested in hearing your responses to all of their questions." "With all due respect, Admiral Moody, I thought the guilty party in this case was decided. This cadet," he said, nodding at Claire, "probably caused the problem. I still don't know what she touched or how she did it, but I'm working on it." Claire straightened and glared at Wiley. Beverly grabbed her arm, holding her back from any response. Beverly could feel her legs shaking as she walked forward. She felt more nervous than when she played the lead in a musical on Caldos 4. "Admiral, by all means, Cadet Howard, please relate your story to the commander." Beverly stated her theories about the computer simulation. She mentioned how easy it was to modify a tape, how easy it was to change an existing tape in subtle ways, and override fail-safes as long as one had the correct authorization. "Now, Cadet Data," Moody said, turning to Data, please explain to Commander Wiley what you and Cadet Howard were discussing earlier." "Wasn't it something about a possible type of virus within the computer simulation?" "What? A virus? Don't be ridiculous," Wiley scoffed, dropping the stack of disks haphazardly on the computer console. "We have programs that eliminate viruses within a computer program." "True," responded Data, unflappable. "But it is impossible if you were an expert at programming. But it is possible if you were an expert at programming computer simulations to enter a type of virus within a program, then extract the virus." Wiley sputtered and turned to Moody. Are you accusing me of tampering with my own simulations with a virus to harm others, especially one of my cadets?" The Admiral walked behind the console and faced the commander. "I am suggesting that we get to the bottom of this mystery," she answered, "and the only way to find out is to face the physical evidence. Commander, I suggest you check out the simulation in question." The holodeck door suddenly hissed open, and Cadet Stephen Cody entered the room, carrying several computer simulation tapes. He hesitated as he stared at the group, then walked over to a computer console. He turned and began to sort the tapes. "Cadet Cody," said Wiley in a stern voice, Get me the tape from the day Cadet Peter Peterson was hurt. It's in the stack of tapes I brought over from the computer center today, over there on the desk. Stephen stopped and did not move. Cadet Cody, I gave you an order. Get the tape. Stephen shifted uncomfortably. Sir, I don't. I'll get it myself, Wiley grumbled, pushing past Stephen and looking through the tapes on the desk. After a few seconds, he pulled out a purplish tape. Sir, he said, reaching over and handing the disc to the Admiral. After you, Commander Wiley, please, said Moody, indicating the computer console. Wiley stepped up to the console and pushed the tape into a slot. He pushed several panels and spoke. Computer. Working. Please analyze the tape and answer the following questions. Does the tape contain the simulation from the medical emergencies class from... He hesitated. 29.3 hours ago, sir. Data interjected. Thank you, Cadet. Wiley nodded to Data. Computer, the class from 29.3 hours ago. Affirmative. Analyze the simulation of the starship USS Gallant under attack by a Romulan bird of prey, he ordered, then looked at Beverly. And the simulation of the shuttlecraft traveling to Pella through an asteroid belt. Working. Are the simulations correct? Beverly held her breath as the computer answered. Affirmative. Wiley smiled at the Admiral and bowed slightly to Mrs. Owner. My investigation shows the same thing. The tape is fine. The simulations are fine. I believe Data has questions, Mrs. Owner said softly. Data nodded. He stepped in front of Wiley and then turned to Admiral Moody. Admiral Moody, he asked, with your permission. Of course, Cadet Data, be my guest. Computer, are there any anomalies in the simulations? Negative. Wiley smiled again. Data thought for a moment. Computer, does the tape show any residual signatures that differ from the original program? Working. Affirmative. A secondary program has entered and exited the program. Residual data was found in sectors 3, 18, and 94. There is no damage to the simulations. Data turned to the Admiral. A secondary program would be a virus-type program. You see, Admiral Moody, he explained, no matter what type of virus is sent through the system, there will always be traces left. Pieces of computer code, if you will, remain. Yes, said Beverly, turning to Moody. The human body is the same way with some viruses. We have antibodies that resist certain viruses in our body, so we appear to be healthy, but there is always a trace of the virus left within us, like the chickenpox virus. It's always in a person after they've had the disease, but antibodies keep it at bay most of the time. An interesting comparison, Cadet Howard, responded Data. Not completely inaccurate. For a moment, no one spoke or moved. Beverly looked around at the group. A virus,